Every day, we see the darker side of the world around us. We witness how people can hurt others in ways that are hard to understand. It's a sad part of life, but it's something we can't ignore. As someone who dives into the world of crime, I'm here to share the most shocking stories and try to understand what drives people to do such things. I'm Michael, and today, I've got another unreal true crime story for you. On April 4th, 2014, a panicked 911 call came from a small apartment in Vermont. A mother's voice trembled. Her baby wasn't breathing. Paramedics rushed to the scene, finding 14-month-old Peighton Geraw unresponsive in his crib. His little body was still, his skin cold. The once happy baby, full of smiles, was now gone. Doctors did everything they could, but it was too late. Peighton was pronounced dead at the same hospital where he had been born just over a year earlier. At first, it seemed like a heartbreaking accident, but when doctors took a closer look, something didn't add up. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered a disturbing truth. What really happened to Peighton that day, and who was responsible? Peighton Geraw came into the world on January 10, 2013, at Fletcher Allen Healthcare in Burlington, Vermont. His mother, Nitosha LaForce, had her boyfriend Joshua Geraw sign the birth certificate even though he wasn't the child's biological father. To this day, the identity of Peyton's real father remains unknown. From the start, Peighton was a baby who brought joy to those around him. With his light brown hair, deep dark eyes, and round, chubby cheeks, he was adored by everyone who met him. He loved wearing baseball caps and bright, cheerful outfits, always lighting up the room with his constant smiles. But behind his happy demeanor, Peyton's life was anything but easy. Born 5 weeks premature, Peighton was exposed to methadone before birth. His mother later admitted to using heroin during the first part of her pregnancy and then switching to methadone in the later months. Despite these challenges, Peighton was described as a sweet and easygoing baby, what some would call a dream baby. Nitosha LaForce was born in 1986 to Craig and Patricia LaForce. Her parents divorced when she was just 5 and both later remarried. As she grew older, she found herself on a troubled path. In 2005, during a heated argument with an acquaintance of her ex-boyfriend, she stabbed the man in the neck. Court records show that this act of violence led to a prison sentence of more than 2 years. By the time Peighton was born, she was still on parole for that crime. Struggling to get by, Nitosha bounced between homeless shelters and cheap motels, relying on welfare for survival. Her relationships were often volatile, marked by addiction and violence. In early 2013, she and Joshua took Peighton to New Hampshire, violating the conditions of her parole. On May 29th of that year, both Nitosha and Joshua were arrested. With no one else to care for him, Peighton was placed with his maternal grandmother. By July 2013, Nitosha was released from jail, and despite her unstable history, the Vermont Department of Children and Families returned Peighton to her. At the time, she was living at the Lund Family Center, a residential program aimed at helping mothers turn their lives around. She seemed to be making progress. She completed parenting courses, though she later admitted she didn't find them helpful. The Vermont Department of Children and Families continued checking in on Peighton until January 2014, but their involvement soon faded. Even though she had regained custody of her son, Nitosha showed little interest in his medical care. The Vermont Department of Children and Families had to push her to keep up with his vaccinations. Once she left the Lund Family Center, she quickly fell back into old patterns. In January 2014, she moved into an apartment on Mallets Bay Avenue in Winooski, Vermont. Within a month, she had entered a new relationship with Tyler Chicoine, a man with a troubling past. His criminal record included charges for assault, robbery, and disorderly conduct, among others. On April 2, 2014, Nitosha and Tyler brought Peighton to the hospital, claiming he had suddenly stopped walking and had been vomiting. Medical staff at Fletcher Allen Healthcare noticed bruises on his neck, two circular marks, each about a centimeter wide, in an unusual location for a child to bruise naturally. The couple couldn't provide a clear explanation for how they got there. Despite these concerning injuries, doctors missed something even more alarming. Peighton had a broken leg. Still, he was released back into Nitosha's care. The hospital did, however, file a report with Child Services. Soon after, investigators uncovered a text message Nitosha had sent to Tyler's sister. It read, "The hospital called the Vermont Department of Children and Families about those bruises on his neck and are coming to my house tomorrow at 1 p.m. So I don't want to look like I don't have much food and stuff." On April 4, 2014, John Salter, a seasoned investigator with 25 years of experience, visited Nitosha's home twice. On his first visit, he was told Peighton was sleeping. When he returned later that day, Nitosha briefly showed him the child's bruises, but the room was dimly lit. Salter never physically examined Peighton. Later, when questioned by authorities, Salter admitted, "Do I know that he was still alive? No, I don't." Not long after Salter left, Nitosha made a chilling call to 911. Her baby wasn't breathing. Peighton was rushed back to Fletcher Allen Healthcare, but there was nothing doctors could do. He was pronounced dead at just 14 months old. The question remains, what really happened to baby Peighton? The autopsy results painted a grim picture. Peighton had suffered severe trauma consistent with shaken baby syndrome. His tiny body bore multiple injuries, including head trauma, bruising on his forehead and neck, retinal hemorrhages in both eyes, and brain bleeding. Additionally, his lower leg was fractured, a sign of prior abuse that had gone unnoticed. At the time of Peyton's death, Nitosha was undergoing treatment for opioid addiction at the Howard Center. However, according to court records, she had a habit of sneaking home some of her prescribed buprenorphine, an opioid treatment medication, for Tyler. Just days after Peyton's death, both Nitosha and Tyler were arrested on unrelated parole violations. Nitosha's parole was revoked after testing positive for cocaine and marijuana, while Tyler lost his furlough after testing positive for buprenorphine. By May, investigators had officially ruled Peyton's death a homicide and began digging deeper into the circumstances surrounding it. Despite being under scrutiny, both Nitosha and Tyler denied any involvement. Tyler, who initially claimed he loved Peighton, was found with bruises around his eye and neck. His explanations changed repeatedly. First, he said he got hurt while working out. Then he claimed Nitosha accidentally elbowed him. As the investigation progressed, police questioned Tyler multiple times. Eventually, his story cracked. He admitted that on the day Peighton died, he had witnessed Nitosha violently shaking the toddler before slamming his head onto the floor, just an hour before the investigator John Salter's visit. Tyler also noted that Nitosha seemed to be under the influence of an unfamiliar drug at the time. His admission made him the prosecution's key witness against Nitosha. During a court hearing, Tyler's mother and sister sat in silence as he admitted to withholding critical information from law enforcement. Peyton had died on April 4th, yet it wasn't until May that Tyler revealed the full story. He clearly stated and demonstrated that he saw Natasha violently shake Peyton and slam his head against the floor in the house, the prosecution explained. The medical examiner confirmed that these injuries were the likely cause of death. Court records show that Tyler had spoken to police 4 times before finally telling the truth during his third and fourth interviews, which included a polygraph test. When asked whether Tyler's earlier dishonesty might have cost Peyton his life, prosecutors acknowledged that his false statements had delayed and misdirected the investigation, initially shielding Natasha from suspicion. As the case moved forward, Tyler prepared to testify against his former girlfriend. He recounted that just before investigator Salter's visit, he had stepped out of the shower to find Natasha violently shaking Peyton and slamming him to the ground in frustration. According to Tyler, Natasha snapped, yelling, "He wouldn't shut the fuck up." Shocked, Tyler responded, "He's a fucking baby. What do you mean?" He then pulled Natasha away from Peyton, briefly held the child, and placed him back in his crib. At the time, he said, Peyton was still breathing. Both Natasha and Tyler became suspects in the case, but while Tyler passed a polygraph test, Natasha failed hers. She attempted to shift the blame onto Tyler, even claiming that Peyton didn't like him, a bizarre accusation considering the child was only 14 months old. With each of them pointing fingers at the other, the case initially lacked clarity. However, the prosecution ultimately determined Natasha was responsible for Peyton's death. On May 28, 2014, she was formally charged with second-degree murder. She pleaded not guilty and was held without bail. If convicted, she faced up to 20 years in prison. Just days after Peyton's tragic death, the legal proceedings against his mother, Natasha LaForce, were already underway. During her first court appearance, the judge reviewed the charges against her, ensuring she understood her rights. The prosecution immediately filed a motion requesting that Natasha be held without bail. "We believe the evidence clearly establishes probable cause, and given the severity of the charges, we ask the court to hold her without bail," the prosecutor argued. Natasha's defense attorney pushed for a temporary ruling, allowing time for another attorney to officially file a motion for bail review. However, after considering the probable cause affidavit, the judge determined that the evidence against Natasha was strong enough to justify an order to hold her without bail. "I am issuing the order to detain the defendant without bail," the judge ruled. A hearing will be scheduled upon request from the defense. The prosecution agreed to move forward with setting the hearing. Despite the legal battle ahead, the case against Natasha was not without its challenges. With limited forensic evidence, and both Natasha and Tyler pointing fingers at each other, the prosecution faced an uphill battle in securing a conviction. In October 2016, Natasha reached a plea deal with prosecutors. She pleaded no contest to manslaughter and child cruelty charges, avoiding a trial. As part of the agreement, she was sentenced to a minimum of 6 years and a maximum of 15 years in prison, with credit for time served since 2014. Additionally, she was placed on probation until 2036, with conditions restricting her contact with children under 10 and requiring substance abuse treatment. However, in May 2020, Natasha was released early due to pandemic-related concerns. She remains a free woman today. Meanwhile, Tyler also faced legal consequences. He pleaded guilty to providing false information to law enforcement, admitting that he had waited weeks before revealing the truth about Peyton's final moments. According to court records, He initially spoke to investigators 4 times, but only began telling the full story during his third and fourth interviews. Tyler described Nitosha as being in an unrecognizable state the day Peighton died. As part of his plea agreement, Tyler was released from prison, where he had been serving time for a separate parole violation. He was also set to be the state's key witness in Nitosha's trial. However, he never had to testify. Nitosha's plea deal rendered his testimony unnecessary. Peyton's funeral was held on April 12, 2014, in Burlington. Mourners were encouraged to wear baseball-style caps and bright spring colors in honor of his favorite things. A few weeks later, on May 25th, friends and family gathered in Burlington's Battery Park for a candlelight vigil. Dozens of supporters released paper lanterns into the sky in Peyton's memory. "We hope he's looking down on us and this makes him happy," said Cassandra Blondin, a family friend who helped organize the vigil. "We don't want another child to go through this." Jonathan Hinton, Peyton's godfather, expressed his sorrow. "I think some changes need to be made at the Child Services Agency. I'm heartbroken, but it's nice to see people coming together to say goodbye. I miss you, little buddy. I love you." Peyton's death raised serious questions about Vermont's Department of Children and Families and whether the system had failed him. Some pointed fingers at the hospital, arguing that doctors had overlooked his broken leg and released him back into his mother's care despite obvious warning signs. Others criticized Vermont's Department of Children and Families for not taking stronger action when concerns about Peyton's safety were first raised. The public outcry led to an internal investigation into Vermont's Department of Children and Families' handling of the case. Governor Peter Shumlin called for reforms, and scrutiny fell on investigator John Salter, who had visited Peyton's home just before his mother called 911. Some wondered, had Peyton already been dead during that visit? Despite the controversy, the county state's attorney's office determined that Salter had followed Vermont's Department of Children and Families protocols, which at the time did not require a physical examination of the child. Prosecutors concluded there was not enough evidence to pursue criminal charges against him. At a press conference, state's attorney defended Salter's actions. He did what he was trained to do. He followed the policies Vermont's Department of Children and Families had in place. However, Peyton's case exposed the flaws in those very policies. Many other states required caseworkers to conduct hands-on checks to confirm a child's well-being, yet Vermont did not. A 27-page report from Vermont State Police detailed Peyton's history with Vermont's Department of Children and Families. Born premature and drug-exposed, he had initially been placed in protective custody before being returned to his mother under supervised conditions at the Loon Family Center. While Nitosha had made some progress in parenting programs, she continued to struggle with addiction and instability. Days before his death, medical staff had noted bruises on Peyton's body. Yet under Vermont's Department of Children and Families standards at the time, they did not meet the threshold for documented abuse. A deputy commissioner acknowledged the heartbreaking nature of the case and the need to reassess policies, especially given the increasing challenges posed by opioid addiction and unstable family environments. Lawmakers reevaluated Vermont's child protection laws, and in June 2015, they passed reforms shifting the system's focus from family reunification to prioritizing the safety of children. The legislature also approved additional funding to hire more social workers and administrative staff, aiming to improve oversight and prevent future tragedies. Though Peyton's life was heartbreakingly short, his death left a lasting impact. The failures that led to his passing became a catalyst for long overdue changes in Vermont's child welfare system. While those reforms can never bring Peyton back, they serve as a reminder of the responsibility society has to protect its most vulnerable children. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.